Hey guys, how's it going? This is the super popular LG 27GL850 IPS panel, and beside it is the super popular Samsung G7 VA panel. Specs are impressive, with key differences being the panel technologies and the refresh rate. The prices are also impressive. High, with the LG coming in at $500 and Samsung at $700. Now, if you're thinking of getting one, you've come to the right place. And if you already own one, well, I've got the OSD settings here so you can follow along at home. Since this is a review and not an advertisement, I won't be spending the next 10 minutes hyping up each display. Instead, we'll take a look at some of their key differences, both on paper and in real-world use. I'll mostly be running the Samsung at 240Hz, but we'll also include some content at 144. To make things easier to follow, the refresh rate will be displayed at the left and right hand corners. Like other products on this channel, I've purchased this with my own money, so I can experience the same thing you would if you were to purchase it. Welcome back to Reviews for Life. Here we go. Inside the box, we see that both displays include a Displayport cable and a USB 3 upstream cable. There's also an HDMI cable with the LG, so that's a plus. In terms of setup, the LG is easier since everything just clicks into place. And although the Samsung does require screws, it offers height, swivel, tilt, and rotate adjustments. The stand has a massive footprint, and at 13 inches deep, a shallow desk is simply not enough. For ports, both offer USB hubs and audio jacks, with the key difference being the DisplayPort and HDMI port setup. Out of the box, the LG does appear slightly warmer, but after calibration, they looked identical. Both displays are able to cover 99% of the sRGB color space, so no complaints here. The LG, however, is able to cover 83% of the Adobe RGB compared to Samsung's 79%. But in this case, more isn't necessarily better, since most content today is shown in sRGB anyways. The Adobe RGB metric is used more by enthusiasts and graphic designers, where color reproduction is top priority. Dark levels are better on the VA, and it's quite obvious from this picture. But this is only an issue if you're the type of person who enjoys taking photos of black screens in a dark room with long exposure settings. Honestly, if I wasn't comparing them side by side, then I probably wouldn't have noticed. But one thing I did notice was the viewing angles. Color shifting on the Samsung is more noticeable when it's off-center. Using a white picture, the LG retains its brightness for much longer before becoming gray, and it's quite obvious once we crop in. But perhaps a bigger issue with the viewing angles is along the edges. This time, instead of rotating the monitor, we'll rotate the camera. Pixels start disappearing when we go off-center and recovers once we return. The flat panel has the same behavior, but occurs at much more extreme angles. This is most likely caused by the display curvature and not the IPS or VA panel technology. In actual usage, I only really notice this when somebody is sitting beside me, looking at the same screen. Moving on to gaming, one of the issues with low-end VA panels is ghosting, and in Hearthstone, they have a hard time rendering card text when the environment shakes. This is clearly not the case here, and to me, both displays look identical. Switching over to Hades, dark scenes look great, and the IPS glow isn't noticeable. One thing we do notice is the highlights dimming more on the VA panel. In real life, it actually doesn't look this bad. And just like with the IPS glow, it's one of those things that you'll notice if you're looking for it. But in everyday use, it's not obvious at all. Finally, moving on to some fast-paced games, Call of Duty performs identical on both, and there weren't any ghosting on either. Here, the biggest difference is curved versus flat, and that's really just a matter of preference. There's definitely more immersion with the curved, but it does cause me more eye strain because I'm sitting closer. Testing some higher frame rate content, the Samsung does feel smoother, but certainly not as big of a jump from 60 to 144. So for games, the two monitors are extremely similar, and the reason to pick one over the other is for the refresh rate or for the curvature. In terms of productivity, both monitors perform the same. Tasks with a lot of static images, such as browsing, programming, or photo editing, feels identical. The higher refresh rate of the Samsung doesn't actually allow me to browse Reddit any faster. The only noticeable difference is that Windows animations are marginally smoother, and mouse movements feel slightly more responsive on the Samsung. Personally, for productivity, I think I would benefit more from higher resolution or a larger monitor. Now, moving on to some motion tests, the Samsung does look smoother, and in terms of ghosting, it looks a little bit worse. Due to the limitations of my camera, it doesn't pick this out very well, but in real life, the white trails on this UFO does seem longer. And in terms of inversion uniformity, I was getting some of these weird banding artifacts as the pattern scrolled across the screen. This is kind of weird, and if somebody knows more about this, let me know in the comments below. Now, just for fun, I built a website using a black background and white text, just to see if I can exaggerate the effects of ghosting. Trust me when I say that I tried really hard to spot any difference. Now, if I use green, the effect is a little clearer, but not by much. When scrolling, we can see that the text on the VA panel is indeed a little more dim than the IPS. But again, it's really subtle. Honestly, at this point, we're starting to enter the realm of research, where specialized tools are required to make accurate assessments. So for all practical purposes, ghosting or black smearing is not an issue for either monitor. So where does that leave us? Both IPS and VA technologies have come a long way in terms of picture quality and in refresh rate. VA panels have a long history of ghosting, and that's the trade-off for getting such amazing blacks. To see a measurable difference at the high end, you really need the right tools and tests. Because of that, I can't recommend one over the other based on panel technology alone. Instead, it comes down to factors such as price, curvature, and whether your computer can actually run 240Hz content. For me, I do a combination of video editing, programming, and casual gaming, so the LG fits my needs well. If you are in the market, an alternative to consider would be the Spectrum 27-inch 240Hz IPS panel. It was released late 2020 and seems quite promising. Alright, that's it from me. If you've enjoyed this content, consider hitting like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and stay classy, YouTube.